The hurricane made landfall at 3:42 a.m. on September 23, 1935, and Elena Vasquez had exactly 6 minutes to get everyone into the bunker. She heard it approaching across the Gulf of Mexico, a sound like a freight train made of wind and fury, growing louder with each passing second. The lighthouse shook on its foundation. 200 years of brick and mortar groaning under pressure it was never designed to withstand. Everyone below. Now, Elena shouted over the screaming wind, grabbing the arm of the last straggler, a young Coast Guard sailor who'd frozen in panic. They descended the spiral staircase just as the first window exploded inward, showering the observation deck with razor-sharp glass. They crashed through the hidden door at the lighthouse's base just as the storm surge hit. A wall of seawater 40 feet high that swallowed the entire island, erasing beaches and buildings and boats in seconds. The sound was apocalyptic. Millions of gallons of ocean reclaiming land that had been dry for generations. Then, relative quiet. The roar of wind became muffled, distant. They were safe in Elena's madness. The underground bunker everyone in Port Isabel had mocked her for building. The bunker the town council had called a waste of taxpayer money. The shelter that was now saving 23 lives. Elena stood in the LED-lit space, counting heads to make sure everyone had made it, and allowed herself one moment of vindication. They'd called her paranoid for 3 years. Tonight, paranoia became prophecy. 3 years earlier, June 1932. You want to build what? Mayor Thompson stared at Elena like she'd just proposed turning the lighthouse into a circus. A hurricane bunker beneath the lighthouse foundation. Reinforced concrete, independent ventilation, supplies for up to 50 people for 2 weeks. They were in the town council chambers in Port Isabel, Texas. Elena had requested this meeting to present her proposal, knowing it would be controversial. Why? Thompson asked simply. Elena Vasquez was 42 years old, a former Navy engineer who'd spent 20 years designing ship structures before taking the lighthouse keeper position. She'd survived 3 major storms at sea and studied meteorological patterns obsessively. She knew what was coming because she understood the cycles. Because I've analyzed hurricane data for the Gulf Coast going back 150 years, Elena explained, unrolling weather charts across the council table. Major hurricanes, Category 4 or higher, strike this region approximately every 30 years. The last catastrophic storm was 1906. We're overdue. And when it comes, this lighthouse will be the highest ground for 20 miles. People will come here seeking shelter. We need to be ready. The lighthouse itself is shelter, Councilman Rodriguez countered. 200 years old, solid brick, withstood every storm since 1735. The lighthouse can handle wind, Elena said firmly. It cannot handle storm surge. A Category 5 hurricane will generate waves 40 feet high. This entire island sits at 15 feet elevation. The surge will overtake everything. The only safety is below ground. You're talking about spending $15,000 on a hole in the ground for a storm that might not come for another 30 years, Thompson said, incredulous. I'm talking about spending $15,000 to save lives when that storm does come. Not if. When. The council voted it down unanimously. Vasquez's vault, they started calling it. The newspapers had a field day. Asterisk lighthouse keeper proposes underground fortress against imaginary hurricane. Asterisk editorial cartoons showed Elena digging a hole to China while storms passed harmlessly overhead. But Elena Vasquez had learned long ago that official approval was optional. Personal initiative was not. She spent the next 6 months working with a small construction crew, paying out of her own savings and a Navy pension she'd been saving for retirement. They excavated beneath the lighthouse's foundation during the night and weekends when council members wouldn't notice. They poured reinforced concrete walls 3 feet thick. They installed ventilation shafts disguised as drainage pipes. They created a space that could hold 50 people comfortably for 2 weeks. You're actually doing this, her assistant keeper, James Chen, said one night as they watched the crew pour the final concrete wall. Building the bunker anyway, even after the council said no. The council controls budget allocation, Elena replied. They don't control what I do with my own money on lighthouse property. This facility will save lives. I don't need their permission to do the right thing. Word spread through Port Isabel. The crazy lighthouse keeper was spending her life savings on an underground bunker for a hurricane that would probably never come. Vasquez's folly, the local paper dubbed it. The general store started a betting pool on how long before Elena went completely broke. Even her own family questioned her judgment. Her sister Maria visited from Houston, concern etched on her face. Elena, you've spent $20,000 now. Your entire pension. What if this storm never comes? Then I'll die poor but with a clear conscience. Elena said simply, but Maria, I've studied the data. I've seen the patterns. I've lived through storms at sea that would terrify God himself. This hurricane is coming. Maybe this year, maybe in 5 years, but it's coming. And when it does, I'll have saved lives. That's worth more than money. Or you'll have wasted everything on paranoia. Time will tell. The bunker took 18 months to complete. Elena didn't just build an empty concrete box. She prepared it meticulously. Water storage * 500 gallons in sealed tanks, with purification tablets for more. Food supplies * canned goods, dried rice, beans, hardtack, vitamins. Medical equipment * full trauma kit, antibiotics, surgical tools. Power * hand crank generators, battery banks, LED lighting. Ventilation * mechanical air circulation with filters. Sanitation * chemical toilets. Waste disposal system. Communications * ham radio with independent antenna. Comfort items. * books, games, blankets, even a gramophone with records. She created a detailed operations manual and trained James Chen as her backup. They ran evacuation drills, timing how quickly they could get people from the lighthouse top to the bunker. They mapped the island's population and calculated capacity. The town watched this obsessive preparation with amusement that curdled into mockery. Vasquez is organizing evacuation drills now, someone reported at the docks. Timing how fast we can run to her underground palace. Woman's lost her mind. All that Navy engineering broke something in her head, the mayor told reporters. She sees threats that don't exist. Even younger sailors started using "pulling a Vasquez" as slang for overreacting. Why are you tying down everything on deck? We're barely getting rain. Don't pull a Vasquez. Elena ignored it all. She'd spent enough time in the Navy to know that people mock preparation until disaster proves them wrong. Then the mockery stops very quickly. By August 1935, the bunker was fully operational. Elena wrote a note and placed it in a weatherproof box near the entrance. * If you're reading this, you're in danger and you found safety. This bunker was built to protect life when the ocean tries to reclaim the land. The supplies will sustain you. The structure will shelter you. The ventilation will keep you breathing. If the storm has trapped you here, don't panic. You have everything you need to survive. Elena Vasquez, August 1935 *. She sealed the box and climbed back up to the lighthouse, hoping she'd never need to open it. September 22, 1935. The barometric pressure started dropping at noon. Elena had been monitoring it obsessively for 3 days, watching a massive storm system organize in the Caribbean. By afternoon, she knew with absolute certainty. This was it. The big one. The storm she'd been preparing for. She radioed the Coast Guard. Station Port Isabel. This is Lighthouse Keeper Vasquez. We have a Category 5 hurricane approaching. Recommend immediate evacuation of the island. The response was dismissive. Vasquez, we're tracking a tropical storm. It's Category 2 at most. You're overreacting again. I'm reading pressure at 892 millibars and dropping. Wind speed increasing rapidly. This storm will make landfall as Category 5 within 12 hours. You need to evacuate now. Vasquez, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but the official weather service has this as a manageable storm. Recommend you secure the lighthouse and shelter in place. Elena wanted to scream. They weren't listening. Again, just like the council, just like the mayor, just like everyone who'd mocked her for 3 years. But she didn't have time for frustration. She had work to do. She activated her own warning system, a series of signal flags and bells that she'd arranged with the few islanders who'd actually listened to her drills. Within an hour, 17 people had arrived at the lighthouse. Families who trusted Elena's judgment more than official forecasts. "Is it really that bad?" asked Mrs. Rodriguez, clutching her 2 young children. Elena showed her the barometer. "In 30 years of studying weather, I've never seen pressure this low. This storm is going to be catastrophic. Anyone who stays on this island in their homes will die. We need to get everyone we can to the bunker." They sent runners through Port Isabel, warning anyone who would listen. Some came. Most didn't. "It's just Vasquez being paranoid again," the mayor told people who asked. "Shelter in place. Board your windows. You'll be fine." By midnight, 23 people had gathered at the lighthouse. Elena began moving them into the bunker, organizing them, checking supplies. The wind was already picking up, palm trees bending horizontal. At 3 a.m., the Coast Guard station called. "Vasquez, we're evacuating. Winds are Category 4 and rising. We were wrong. Can you take our personnel?" "How many?" 6 sailors. "We can be there in 10 minutes. "Come now. We're sealing the bunker at 3:30. The sailors arrived at 3:28, just as Elena was doing her final head count. 29 people total, including herself. Capacity was 50, so they had room. Supplies rated for 50 people for 2 weeks would last 29 people for over 3 weeks if needed. At 3:42 a.m., the hurricane made landfall, and Elena sealed the bunker door. The storm lasted 14 hours. 14 hours of listening to the ocean try to kill them. The bunker shook. Water seeped through microscopic cracks in the concrete. The ventilation system struggled against the pressure differential, but it held. When they finally emerged the next evening, Port Isabel was gone. Not damaged. Gone. Every building below 20 feet elevation had been swept away. The Coast Guard station, obliterated. The docks erased. Homes, businesses, boats, vanished. The storm surge had been 43 feet high, exactly as Elena had predicted. The lighthouse still stood, battered but intact, its 200-year-old brick construction having survived once again. But it would have been a death trap. Everyone who'd sheltered inside the lighthouse proper would have drowned when the surge hit. The only survivors on the entire island were the 29 people in Elena's bunker. Sheriff Mason, who'd been one of the skeptics who came to the lighthouse at the last minute, stood in the ruins of what had been his town. "How did you know?" he asked quietly. "How did you know it would be this bad?" "I listened to the data instead of my hopes," Elena said. "I prepared for the worst outcome instead of the most convenient one. And I did the work even when everyone said I was crazy." The story spread across Texas like wildfire. The crazy lighthouse keeper who'd wasted her life savings on a bunker had saved 29 lives, including 6 Coast Guard sailors and 2 councilmen who'd voted against funding her project. Newspapers sent reporters. The governor came to see the bunker. Engineering firms asked Elena to consult on emergency shelter designs. The federal government allocated funding to build similar bunkers at lighthouses across the Gulf Coast. Port Isabel officially renamed the facility Vasquez Sanctuary and erected a plaque at the lighthouse base. Asterisk built 1933 to 1935 by Elena Vasquez, lighthouse keeper. While others laughed, she prepared. While others denied, she built. 29 souls owe their lives to one woman's refusal to ignore truth for comfort. Asterisk. 20 years later, 1955. Elena Vasquez retired from lighthouse keeping at age 62. In the 20 years since the 1935 hurricane, Vasquez Sanctuary had saved 43 more lives during subsequent storms. The bunker had been expanded and improved, now managed by the Coast Guard as an official emergency facility. At her retirement ceremony, Mayor Thompson, the same mayor who denied her initial funding, gave a speech. 23 years ago, I told Elena Vasquez she was wasting money on a hole in the ground. I laughed at her preparations. I mocked her concerns. He paused, emotional. I was wrong. Catastrophically, shamefully wrong. And if Elena hadn't been brave enough to build anyway, despite our mockery, I would be dead. My family would be dead. 29 people would have died that night. He turned to Elena. You didn't build that bunker because we believed in you. You built it because you believed in the truth, even when the truth was unpopular. That's the definition of courage. Elena accepted the honor with characteristic humility. I just did what the data demanded. The Gulf of Mexico doesn't care about our opinions or our budgets. It kills when conditions are right. I simply built a place where it couldn't reach us. But perhaps the highest honor came from an unexpected source. The Karankawa tribe, whose ancestors had inhabited these islands for centuries, sent an elder to the ceremony. You followed old wisdom, the elder said. Respect the ocean. Prepare for the big storm. Shelter the community. This is the way of the coast. We honor this. They gave her a name in their language. She who reads the wind. It was, they explained, reserved for those who understand nature's warnings and prepare accordingly. Modern day. Today, Vasquez Sanctuary has saved over 180 lives since its construction. It's been upgraded with modern technology but maintains Elena's original design principles. Overbuilt, overstocked, and ready for the worst. The bunker serves as a training facility for disaster preparedness specialists. Elena's original operations manual is studied in emergency management courses. Her story is taught as the perfect example of one person's preparation saving an entire community. But perhaps the most touching tribute is what the survivors did. Every September 23rd, the anniversary of the 1935 hurricane, descendants of the 29 survivors gather at the lighthouse. They maintain the bunker, check supplies, run evacuation drills, continuing Elena's work. Grandmother would want us to be ready, says Maria Vasquezchen, granddaughter of James Chen and Elena's niece. She's the current facility manager. She didn't build this place for glory or recognition. She built it because it needed to exist. That responsibility continues. On the wall inside the bunker, next to Elena's original note preserved in glass, hangs a plaque with a quote from one of the survivors. Asterisk, we thought Vasquez was crazy for building this. We laughed at her for 3 years. Then the storm came and proved us wrong. The lesson isn't that Elena was right. It's that we were wrong to mock someone preparing for our survival. Asterisk. Modern meteorologists study the 1935 Port Isabel hurricane as one of the most destructive storms in Gulf Coast history. They also study Elena Vasquez as a case study in disaster prediction and preparation. She anticipated needs accurately, used available resources brilliantly, and proved that one person's careful work can save dozens of lives. When Elena Vasquez died in 1978 at age 85, the lighthouse flew its flag at half-mast for a week. Over 400 people attended her memorial, including the original 29 survivors and their children and grandchildren. Over 120 people who owed their existence to one woman's refusal to ignore reality. Her grave marker, placed near the lighthouse she tended for 30 years, reads, Elena Vasquez, 1893-1978. She who reads the wind. She built shelter from concrete. She carved safety from earth. She saved lives from ocean, while others only laughed. The final word goes to James Chen, her assistant keeper and lifelong friend, who spoke at her funeral. Elena once told me that being called crazy is temporary, but saving lives is forever. She was right. We stopped calling her crazy on September 23, 1935. But the lives she saved, those echoes continue. Every child born to our survivors, every grandchild, every great-grandchild. They exist because Elena Vasquez trusted data over popular opinion, preparation over comfort, and action over approval. He paused, looking at the crowd of people who owed their existence to one woman's foresight. The lighthouse still stands. The bunker still protects. And the lesson remains. The greatest courage isn't facing danger. It's preparing for danger while everyone tells you you're wrong. The story of Vasquez Sanctuary isn't just about a woman who built a bunker. It's about trust. Trust in science when others prefer denial. Trust in preparation when others choose hope. And trust that doing the right thing matters even when no one appreciates it at the time. The hidden sanctuary that saved 29 lives during one terrible night. The shelter carved from earth while others laughed. The proof that being called paranoid is temporary, but saving lives echoes through generations.